The smell of blood and fear fills the palace corridors of Chang'an. A woman sits on the Empress's throne, and she is smiling. You'll see the moment her own son vomited and refused to govern. You'll find out what court records actually call the thing she made of Lady Qi, and you'll learn why the historians who called her a monster were working for the empire she built. The year is 195 BC. The Han Dynasty is barely 7 years old. Its founder, Emperor Gaozu, is dead. And Lü Zhi, the woman who stood beside him through civil war, imprisonment, and the near-total collapse of everything, is finally, completely, alone with her power. Here's the framing I want you to hold for this entire story. Lü Zhi is a locked box. The official histories hand you the key, tell you exactly what's inside, a monster, a schemer, a cautionary tale. But those histories were written by men whose careers depended on the dynasty she preserved. Open the box yourself. What you find is considerably more complicated. She wasn't born into power. She married into risk. Liu Bang, before he was Emperor Gaozu, was a minor official of questionable reputation. Lü Zhi's father chose him anyway, reportedly impressed by what he read in Liu Bang's face, which tells you something about the era. She followed him into rebellion, into hiding, into the brutal, decade-long war that created the Han Dynasty from the wreckage of the Qian. While Liu Bang fought, she managed. While he accumulated concubines, she endured. She was captured by enemy forces at one point and held for 2 years. 2 years as a political hostage. She survived that too. By the time Liu Bang sat on the dragon throne, Lü Zhi had earned her position through suffering that would have broken most people. Then he started favoring Lady Qi. Here's the part I can't get past, the public nature of it. Lady Qi didn't just attract the emperor's attention, she wielded it, she wore it. She petitioned openly for her son Liu Rui to be named crown prince, displacing Lü Zhi's own son, the boy Lü Zhi had protected and maneuvered for years. Emperor Gaozu seriously considered it. His ministers talked him down. But the damage was done. For years, potentially over a decade, Lü Zhi watched a rival sleep in her husband's bed, raise a rival heir, and nearly dismantle everything she had built. In a court where favor was survival, Lady Qi was an existential threat, and she made sure everyone knew it. So ask yourself, and hold this question because we're coming back to it. What does a woman do with 15 years of controlled rage when the man who protected her enemy finally dies? Emperor Gaozu died in 195 BC. Lü Zhi moved fast. She was effective, I'll give her that. Her son became Emperor Hui. She became Empress Dowager, the real authority behind the throne. And then she started settling accounts. Lady Qi's son, Liu Rui, the boy who almost took the crown, she had him poisoned. Some sources say she lured him to the capital under the pretense of a visit. He was a child. He died quickly. Lady Qi herself was different. Lady Qi, Lü Zhi had been saving. What happened next is recorded in the Shiji, the grand historian Sima Qian's foundational account of Chinese history. Sima Qian was not sympathetic to Lü Zhi. He also had no reason to exaggerate. What he describes plainly. Lü Zhi had Lady Qi's hands and feet cut off. Her eyes were gouged out. She was rendered deaf, reportedly by a chemical process. She was made mute. And then she was placed in a cesspit. Lü Zhi called this thing she had made a human swine. Renji. That is the term in the court records. Not a metaphor, a category. And then she invited her son, the emperor, to come and see it. Emperor Heir looked at what remained of Lady Qi. He didn't know what he was looking at first. Someone had to tell him. He wept. He became ill. Some accounts say he simply refused to rule after that. That he told his mother he was not capable of governing a state that could do such things. He spent the rest of his reign, which was short, in deliberate dissolution. Wine, pleasure, withdrawal. Lü Zhi governed anyway. She had always governed anyway. And here is where the locked box gets interesting. The official verdict on Lü Zhi, baked into the Han histories, repeated for 2,000 years, is that she was a tyrant, cruel, illegitimate, a usurper in everything but name. But look at what she actually did with 15 years of power. She maintained the empire's borders. She kept the peace between the Han court and the Xiongnu Confederacy to the north, a relationship built on tribute and calculated diplomacy, unglamorous work. But the alternative was war China was not ready for. She continued Gaozu's recovery policies. Taxes stayed low. Agricultural land was allowed to consolidate and produce. The empire, still fragile from decades of warfare, needed stability more than glory. She gave it stability. She elevated her own family, the Lü clan, into positions of power, which was the move that ultimately got her condemned. After her death, the Lü clan and their allies staged a purge and wiped out most of the Lü relatives. Then, they rewrote the record. I keep coming back to one detail. The men who destroyed her legacy immediately stabilized their rule using the same methods she pioneered. Same diplomatic posture, same economic restraint. They just had male names attached to the policies. The metaphor I want to leave you with is this. Lü Zhi is a locked box, and the key you've been handed is the wrong shape. The historians who documented her crimes were Han loyalists, working for the sons and grandsons of men she outmaneuvered. Their verdict wasn't neutral, it was political. Cruelty toward Lady Qi, documented and genuinely disturbing and real. But call the same woman a failed ruler. That's where the evidence gets thin and the agenda gets thick. She ruled for 15 years without the empire collapsing. For context, the Qin dynasty, which the Han replaced, lasted 15 years total before imploding. Lü Zhi matched that number and handed power to a dynasty that ran for 400 more. Does that excuse what she did to Lady Qi? No, I'm not arguing that. What was done in that cesspit was monstrous, and the record doesn't soften it. But there's a pattern here that should sound familiar. A woman achieves power through exceptional competence and ruthlessness. Her ruthlessness gets recorded and amplified. Her competence gets attributed to the men around her, or quietly inherited by successors who don't credit her. And history receives a villain, not a ruler. Somewhere in Chang'an, the thing in the cesspit was still breathing. Lü Zhi had won. The empire was hers, and she governed it, and it held. The box is locked. The key you were given doesn't fit. Maybe the real question isn't whether Lü Zhi was a monster. Maybe it's who decided that was the only thing worth remembering. Subscribe. There are more files where this one came from.